The temperature outside was -19. And my uncle was sitting on my front porch with a garbage bag full of his clothes. I didn't find out until my phone buzzed at 6:47 inches the morning. It was my Ring doorbell notification. I almost ignored it. I thought it was just a raccoon again. We get them a lot in the winter, out here in Sudbury. But something made me open the app. And when I saw him on the screen, hunched over in his winter coat, his breath coming out in little white clouds, I felt something drop in my chest that I still can't fully describe. I ran downstairs in my socks. I didn't even grab a coat. He looked up when I opened the door, and the first thing he said to me, the very first thing was, "I'm sorry to bother you, sweetheart." I didn't know where else to go. He was 74 years old. He'd been sitting out there for at least 20 minutes. His hands were shaking when I took the garbage bag from him, and I could feel how cold his fingers were, even through my own skin. I brought him inside, sat him at the kitchen table, put the kettle on, and wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. And the whole time, he kept apologizing, kept saying he was sorry for showing up without calling first. Sorry for the trouble. Sorry for making me worry. I had to press my lips together to keep from crying in front of him. His name is Uncle Gerald. He's my dad's older brother. And for as long as I can remember, he's been the quietest, kindest man in our family. He worked 31 years at a paper mill in northern Ontario. Saved carefully. Lived simply. After my Aunt Dorothy passed away 4 years ago, he moved into a smaller place in town, a clean little 2-bedroom on Elm Street. Nothing fancy. But it was his. He paid it off years ago. He had his routines. He had his garden in the summer. He had his Tim Hortons large double-double every morning at 7. He was fine. He told everyone he was fine, and I believed him because he seemed like it. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, or at least what I didn't know, was what had been happening behind that front door for the past 2 years. I need to back up. I'm 28. I'm a registered practical nurse at Health Sciences North. I work long shifts. I live alone. And my relationship with my dad's side of the family has always been a little complicated. My dad has 2 siblings, Uncle Gerald, who you already know about, and my Aunt Connie, who is 3 years younger than my dad, and has always been the loudest person in any room she walks into. Aunt Connie and her husband Raymond moved back to Sudbury from Mississauga about 5 years ago. They told everyone it was to be closer to family, to help out. They have 2 kids in their 20s, my cousins Derek and Steph, and when they moved back, they made a big show of checking in on Uncle Gerald, helping him with groceries, driving him to appointments. My dad thought it was wonderful. My grandmother, before she passed, I thought it was wonderful. Everyone thought it was wonderful. I thought it was a little too wonderful. But I kept that to myself. About 2 years ago, Uncle Gerald's memory started slipping a little. Nothing dramatic. He'd forget what day it was. Repeat himself in conversation. I lose track of whether he'd taken his medications. His family doctor referred him to a specialist, and the diagnosis was mild cognitive impairment. Not dementia. Not yet. But heading in a direction that needed monitoring. He was still independent. He could still cook for himself, take care of himself. I hold a full conversation, but he needed some support. And Aunt Connie stepped in. She started handling his banking. Just to help, she said. Just to make it easier on him, she said. She became his informal caregiver. She was at his house 3 or 4 times a week. She took over organizing his mail. She got him to sign a document, giving her power of attorney. She told him it was just a standard form, so she could help manage his appointments and medications more easily. He signed it. Of course, he signed it. He trusted her. She was family. I found all of this out that morning. Sitting at my kitchen table, while he held his mug of tea in both hands to warm them up. And slowly, haltingly, told me what had been happening. Last month, he said. Aunt Connie told him his savings were almost gone. He was confused because he hadn't spent anything unusual. He rarely spent anything at all. But when he asked to see his bank statements, she told him not to worry about it. That she was handling everything. That seniors get confused about these things. When he pushed back, she got angry. Raised her voice. Told him he was lucky to have family looking out for him, and he should be grateful instead of suspicious. He stopped pushing back after that. Then, 2 weeks ago, Aunt Connie and Raymond sat him down and told him they'd found him a better living situation. A care home about 40 minutes outside of the city. He hadn't asked for a care home. His doctor hadn't recommended a care home. He was managing fine in his own house. But Aunt Connie had all kinds of explanations. It would be better for his health. He needed more supervision. It wasn't safe for him to be alone. She said she'd already arranged everything. He asked what would happen to his house. She told him not to worry about it. He told me that was the moment he knew something was wrong. Because she changed the subject too fast, 3 days after that conversation. She and Raymond showed up at his house with boxes and told him he was moving that weekend. He said he wasn't ready. He said he wanted to talk to his doctor first. He said he wanted to call me. And Aunt Connie took his phone off the kitchen counter and put it in her purse and said they didn't have time for this. She drove him to the care home on a Thursday afternoon. She signed the intake papers. She left his one suitcase and a garbage bag of his remaining clothes in his room. I told him someone would come visit soon. And left. He lasted 2 days. The facility wasn't abusive. I want to be clear about that. But it was bleak and cold, and it smelled like industrial cleaner, and the staff didn't have time to learn his name properly. He had one 45-minute window each day to use the shared phone. He called my number on Saturday evening. I missed the call because I was at work. He left a voicemail that I've listened to probably 30 times since then. He just said, "It's your Uncle Gerald. Sweetheart, I think I made a mistake somewhere. I'm not really sure where I am. If you get a chance, maybe give me a call back." I called back immediately. No answer phone access was over for the day. I drove to find him on Sunday morning. When I got there, the staff told me he had technically checked himself out an hour earlier. He was allowed to do that. He hadn't been admitted involuntarily. He wasn't a danger to himself. He was a competent adult who had simply been delivered there under pressure and then changed his mind. He'd asked a staff member to call him a cab. He'd used the last $20 in his wallet. Aunt Connie had taken his debit card for safekeeping. He'd given the cab driver my address from memory. He'd been sitting on my porch since 6:05 that morning. I'm a nurse. I know what elder abuse looks like. I've done the training. I've had the workplace seminars. I've filed reports before on behalf of patients. And I sat across from my uncle at my kitchen table, and I recognized every single sign, and I felt a rage come up in me that I am not proud of, and also do not regret. I did not call Aunt Connie. I did not call my dad. I did not text anyone in the family group chat. I called the police non-emergency line first, and reported what had happened, the unauthorized removal from his home. The confiscated phone. The pressure to sign documents. The disappearing savings. The dispatcher was thorough and kind, and told me an officer would come to take a formal statement. And she gave me the number for the Ontario Senior Support Line and the Consent and Capacity Board. Then I called Gerald's bank, TD, Canada Trust. Same branch he'd been at for 30 years. I told them I was his niece, and that I had serious concerns about financial exploitation, and that I needed to speak with their fraud and elder abuse team. They have one. A lot of people don't know that. But they do. And they are legally required to take these reports seriously. Then I went and sat back down with Uncle Gerald and asked him to tell me everything he could remember. And I wrote it all down. The police came that afternoon. 2 officers. Both professional and patient with him. Gerald gave his statement slowly, stopping occasionally to make sure he was remembering correctly. He was clear. He was precise about the things that mattered. He remembered the day Aunt Connie took his phone. He remembered the document she asked him to sign, and the fact that she hadn't let him read it fully before he signed. He remembered specific amounts of money. She had mentioned large grocery runs she'd paid for out of his account. A repair bill for a car that was not his car. Transfers she'd described vaguely as investment rebalancing. One of the officers asked him if he'd ever been told the total balance of his accounts. He said the last time he'd checked himself, about 18 months ago, there had been just over $94,000 between his savings account and his RRSP. Aunt Connie had told him last month there was less than $12,000 left. The officer wrote that down without expression, but I could see the shift in his posture. The bank called me back 2 days later. I'd given them Uncle Gerald's verbal consent on the initial call, and they had since confirmed it in writing with him directly. Their internal review had already flagged multiple transactions as anomalous irregular cash withdrawals. Repeated e-transfers to an account under Raymond's name. Charges to a credit card Gerald hadn't known he had, which had been opened using his information approximately 16 months ago. The credit card alone had a balance of over $8,000. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not feel good about what I was setting in motion. This is not a satisfying thing when it's your own family. I grew up with Aunt Connie at Christmas dinner. I watched her kids open birthday presents. My grandmother loved her. And some part of me kept waiting to hear an explanation that would make all of this make sense. That would make it something other than what it so clearly was. No explanation came. What came instead? About 10 days after I filed the report, was a phone call from a detective at the Greater Sudbury Police Service. She told me that based on the bank's findings, and Uncle Gerald's statement and corroborating documentation they had gathered, they had grounds to pursue charges. She mentioned Section 331 of the Criminal Code, theft by a person holding power of attorney. She also mentioned fraud over $5,000. She explained that the investigation was ongoing and that she couldn't share everything with me. But she wanted to update me directly because I had been so thorough in gathering the initial evidence. I thanked her, and then I sat down on my kitchen floor for a while. I had also, in those 10 days, contacted a lawyer, a real estate and elder law lawyer in Sudbury, whose name I got from a colleague at the hospital who had dealt with something similar with her own father. I explained the situation regarding Uncle Gerald's house. The lawyer told me that even with power of attorney, Aunt Connie did not have the right to sell or transfer his property without his explicit and informed consent, and that if she had taken any steps to do so, those steps could be challenged and reversed. She helped us file for a review of the power of attorney document, which Gerald confirmed he had not fully understood when he signed it. The lawyer also helped us contact the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee, which in Ontario has the authority to investigate cases where a vulnerable adult may have had their financial affairs mismanaged by someone acting under power of attorney. They opened a file. Uncle Gerald has been living with me for 6 weeks now. He sleeps in my second bedroom. Every morning I hear him puttering in the kitchen, and some mornings he has the coffee ready before I wake up, and he always acts a little pleased with himself about it. He's been back to see his doctor. His doctor noted that with reduced stress and a stable routine, he seemed sharper than he had at his last few appointments. He's been talking about going back to his house. He wants to check on the garden. Even though it's February, and there's nothing to check on until May. I told him we'd go together when he's ready. Last week, Aunt Connie called me. She started out measured. She said she was worried about Gerald. Said she just wanted to make sure he was okay. Said she hoped there hadn't been any misunderstanding. I didn't say much. I let her talk. And then her tone shifted, and she started telling me I had made things very difficult for everyone. That family matters. Should stay in the family. That what she'd done was done out of love. And I'd completely twisted the situation with my report. I told her that the police and the bank and the office of the public guardian and trustee were all now involved. And that I thought she should direct any further concerns to her lawyer. She hung up. I put my phone down on the counter and stood at my kitchen window for a few minutes. Outside, it was gray and cold, and the snow on the street had gone that ugly brownish color that it gets in February in northern Ontario. And then I heard Uncle Gerald come in from the living room and ask if I wanted a cup of tea. And I said yes. And we sat at the kitchen table together, like we've been doing every evening. He told me that one of his old friends from the mill had called that afternoon. They'd talked for almost an hour. He seemed lighter than he had in months. He told me again. He tells me this every few days. Like he needs to say it out loud that he doesn't understand how it all happened. How he let it go so far without saying something sooner. I told him what I tell him every time. That it wasn't his fault. That people who do this to someone they're supposed to care for are very good at making it feel normal. Making it feel like you're the one who's confused. The one who's unreasonable. The one who should be grateful. That it didn't happen because he was foolish. It happened because he trusted someone he shouldn't have had to be afraid of. He got quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You're a good girl. Your grandmother would have liked seeing you turn out like this." I didn't say anything to that. I just held my mug and looked at the table. The investigation is still ongoing as of right now. So, I can't say everything about where things stand, legally. What I can tell you is that the power of attorney has been formally suspended, pending the review. Gerald's accounts have been flagged and are under a protection order that prevents any further unauthorized access. His house is his. And no transfer was completed. It turned out Aunt Connie had been in the early stages of exploring a sale, but hadn't yet moved forward with the paperwork. And now she legally cannot. She and Raymond have not reached out again since that phone call. My dad knows everything now. That conversation was hard. He didn't want to believe it. At first, nobody wants to believe something like this about their own sibling. But the documentation is what it is. And eventually, the facts are the facts. He's angry. He's been going through his own process with it. He and Uncle Gerald have talked on the phone a few times. I'm not in the middle of that. That's theirs to work through. What I keep coming back to is that morning. The notification on my phone. The image of him on my porch in the dark. Breath in the cold air. Sitting next to a garbage bag. Like he was someone's leftovers. A man who worked his whole life. Who paid his taxes. Who showed up to every family event. Who never asked anyone for anything reduced to that porch and that garbage bag and that quiet, humiliated apology. "I'm sorry to bother you." Sweetheart, he was not a bother. He was never a bother. And he will never have to apologize for taking up space in this world. Not in my house. Not ever. If you're watching this and you have an elderly parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle, please check in on them. Not just a text. A real visit. Ask to see their bank statements, if you have any concern at all. Know what a power of attorney is, and what it allows, and what it doesn't allow. In Ontario, you can call the Seniors Safety Line at any time. You can contact the Office of the Public Guardian and Trustee. These resources exist, and they work. Use them before someone you love ends up sitting on a porch in the dark at -19 degrees, wondering where they went wrong. They didn't go wrong. Someone failed them. And the difference between those two things matters more than I can say.